This is HOA land now. Start that saw. Take it down.
Darla Whitaker barked the order from the bed of her cream-colored Lexus SUV, pointing at my 106-year-old pecan tree like it was a weed in her driveway. A 19-year-old crewman named Cody flinched, revved the chainsaw he didn't want to hold, and opened a 12-inch wedge into the trunk my great-grandfather planted the year Truman took office. My daughter Hazel screamed from the porch. Sap the color of dark honey ran down the bark. Darla did not apologize. She turned to her landscaping foreman and said, "Good, now the maintenance trailer fits." She thought the HOA owned that strip of land. She thought wrong. And 6 weeks later, she was going to hand me a $300,000 check, or watch every Willow Crest homeowner be gated off their own street. What would you have done in my place? Where are you watching from tonight? The land was my father's land before it was mine, and his father's before that. 14 acres of Central Texas caliche, cedar, and pecan trees, tucked against the eastern fence line of a new subdivision called Willow Crest Estates. My name is Elliot Brooks. I'm a licensed professional land surveyor, third generation, and for 22 years, I've made a living finding the exact place where one human being's ground stops and another's begins. My wife Laurel passed 3 Aprils ago, ovarian, quick, but not quick enough. She left me a 12-year-old named Hazel, a collection of handwritten seed envelopes, and a habit of saying yes to things she shouldn't have. The day after her funeral, I drove Hazel out to the back pecan grove and told her, "This is ours forever. Nobody takes it from us." She nodded the way kids nod when they don't believe you yet. Willow Crest went up 2 years later. 140 beige houses on what used to be the Kimball Cattle Ranch. The HOA formed before the first family moved in. Their president, Darla Whitaker, walked onto my porch in August wearing a cream blazer and a clipboard smile. "Mr. Brooks, we'd love to explore a courtesy corridor," she said, tapping her pen, "for community maintenance staging, very temporary." I told her no, politely. Her smile didn't move. "I think you'll find we already have an easement." I walked her back to my gate and watched her red SUV pull away. That night I pulled the plat from my filing cabinet and confirmed what I already knew. No easement existed. None. Not a word, not a line, not a survey staple. 2 weeks later, I came home from a job in Bastrop to find a trailer on my land. White, 40 feet long, HOA crest stenciled on the side in federal blue. Parked across my gravel turnaround, with the hitch eating into a pecan root I'd nursed since I was Hazel's age. A yellow note flapped under the wiper of my own truck. "As a courtesy to the community, we'll be staging one maintenance trailer on the edge of your property through October. Thank you for being a team player. Darla W., President Willow Crest Estates HOA." Hazel came out carrying 2 glasses of sweet tea. She saw the trailer. She saw my face. She put both glasses down on the railing without spilling a drop, which, if you've ever met a 12-year-old, tells you everything about how much she understood. "Dad." "Yeah, hazelnut." "Is that ours?" "No." "Is it allowed to be there?" "No." Her eyes stayed level, her mother's eyes, exactly. "Are you mad?" I considered the question honestly. I watched a cicada scream itself to death in the crepe myrtle. I smelled diesel drifting off the trailer and something sweeter underneath, somebody's community pool chlorine carried on the wind. I could feel my pulse in my molars. "I'm not mad," I said. "I'm getting organized." That's the thing people misunderstand about surveyors. We don't argue, we don't shout, we measure, we note, we file. We hand you a sealed drawing that shows exactly where you went wrong, and then we let the courthouse do the yelling. I took a photograph, timestamp, GPS coordinates, the license plate of the truck that had been driving across my land, a close-up of the pecan root, and a wide shot of the stenciled HOA crest. I printed 6 copies. I put one in my fireproof box, one in my attorney's mailbox, one in my cloud drive, one in an envelope to the county assessor, one in the bottom drawer of my desk under Laurel's last letter, and the 6th I folded into quarters and placed in Hazel's lunchbox for Monday. She found it at school, read it, and sent me a single text. "You got this, Dad." I did. I filed my formal written trespass notice on a Tuesday. Certified mail, return receipt, with a cover page stamped Brooks Land Surveying, PLS number 4712. I used my professional letterhead on purpose. Darla Whitaker sold 4-bedroom homes for a living. She knew what a seal meant. The letter was 3 paragraphs. First paragraph. I am the fee simple owner of APN 22-134-0031. Second paragraph. You have placed a trailer on my property without any recorded easement, license, or invitation. Third paragraph. Remove it within 7 days or a storage fee of $75 per hour per vehicle will begin to accrue, together with damages. Signed, sealed, dated. Copy to the HOA attorney, to the HOA management company, and to my own lawyer, Holloway Caldwell. Holloway called me within an hour of receipt. He's 71 years old, wears bow ties, and hunts ducks badly. Son, you know she's going to double down, right? I know. Good. Keep the photographs coming. And Elliot, put up the signs. By nightfall, I'd hammered in 9 new signs around the contested strip, green and white, 30 by 24 inches, printed exactly to Texas Penal Code 30.05 specifications. No trespassing, private property, commercial storage available by prior written contract only, rate schedule posted. I bolted a laminated rate sheet to the gate post beside the oldest pecan. $75 per hour per trailer, billed in 15-minute increments, $200 minimum, payment due on demand. At the bottom, in bold, by entering this property with a vehicle or trailer without a written agreement, you accept these terms as a bailment contract under Texas common law. A takeaway worth pinning. In most states, if you post a rate schedule and a written entry condition clearly, somebody who drives a vehicle past your signs has agreed to your contract the moment their wheels cross the line. Darla read the letter. I know she did, because Hazel saw her crumple it in her fist outside the community mailbox kiosk the next afternoon. By Thursday morning, Darla had responded the only way Darla knew how. I woke up to the sound of a diesel engine and 3 dogs barking. 2 more HOA trailers were being backed onto my land. One was a maintenance trailer, twin of the first. The second was a 20-foot enclosed event trailer, white, with a Willow Crest Estates logo the size of a pool raft painted on the side, and a row of folded pop-up tents strapped to the roof. A man in a high-vis shirt unloaded 2 generators and set them down on my gravel, like he was setting down groceries. Behind him, a second man slapped an HOA ownership sticker on my cedar fence. "Excuse me," I said, walking up. "That fence is mine. That sticker doesn't belong there." He didn't even look at me. "Ma'am says it's HOA corridor now." "Ma'am who?" "Ma'am Whitaker." I photographed him. I photographed the sticker. I photographed the men, the generators, the plates, the stencil, and the dust on the pecan bark. Then I walked back inside, opened my laptop, and logged the trespass as officially beginning at 6:47 a.m. I created an invoice line for each trailer. I set a timer. Saturday, I took Hazel to the community pool, which, for the record, was public access for surrounding landowners under the original developer agreement. I had the paperwork in my truck if anyone wanted to discuss it. Darla was holding court in a lounge chair by the shallow end, surrounded by her board. Barbara Penn, Tom Reeves, Nadine Prescott. She saw me from across the pool, and her mouth opened like a fish that had just remembered air. "Oh, Mr. Brooks." She raised her voice so half the pool could hear. "We got your silly little letter. Very cute. My attorney says you're having a, what did he call it? A confusion." Barbara and Nadine giggled. "I'm not confused, Mrs. Whitaker." "No?" She sipped something pink through a straw. "Then maybe you should check whose HOA you move next to, honey. This isn't your daddy's old Texas anymore." Hazel's fingers tightened around mine. I smiled, which cost me. "Y'all have a lovely afternoon." I walked us to the snack bar, bought my kid a rainbow pop, and started trailer number 3's billing clock on my phone while she licked orange off her knuckles. The 3rd Friday of the month is Landscape Day at Willow Crest. A truck rolls in at 7 with 8 uniformed men, 2 zero-turn mowers, and a trailer full of chainsaws. I'd watched them work the subdivision for months. Tidy, mechanical, unthinking. On this particular Friday, I was on a boundary job an hour east, walking a calcium-streaked creek with a total station on my shoulder. Hazel was home. Summer vacation. Barefoot on the porch, elbow deep in a bowl of cherries. She called me at 9:12. "Dad, they're cutting trees." I heard the 2-stroke whine behind her before I understood what she'd said. My stomach dropped through the bottom of my boots. "Which trees, Hazel?" "The old ones. By the east fence." There were 2 old ones by the east fence. My great-grandfather planted the first one the year Truman took office. My father grafted the second off the first when I was 6. Together, they produced about 100 pounds of pecans a year. The pecans my mother used to fold into the pie at Thanksgiving before she passed, back when Hazel was too small to remember her grandparents clearly. Baby, go inside, lock the door, record video through the window. Do not go near them. Okay? I drove home the way people drive when the hospital calls. 90 miles an hour on FM 1431. 3 missed stop signs. Pulse in my throat like a second heart. When I crested the last hill and saw my own gate, I saw the 2 trees already on the ground. 2 trunks, each about the thickness of a man's waist, lying in the grass like felled cathedral pillars. Sawdust in a soft blonde halo around the stumps. A rainbow of pecan sap weeping from the cut faces. The youngest of the crewmen, maybe 19, maybe 20, was leaning on a chainsaw, cheeks pink, wiping his forehead with the hem of his shirt. Darla was supervising, of course. Clipboard, cream blazer, Bluetooth earpiece blinking like a second pulse. Hazel was behind the front window, phone pressed to the glass, filming. She was crying in the quiet kind of way that worries me more than the loud kind. I parked. I walked up. I did not raise my voice. Who authorized the removal of those trees, Mrs. Whitaker? Me. They were overhanging community access. It's in the standards. This is not community access. This is my land. Those trees were 106 and 78 years old, respectively. Do you understand what you just did? I understand that Mr. Brooks needs to learn how an HOA functions. The 19-year-old's eyes flicked up from his chainsaw to her face. Something moved behind his expression that he was too young to hide. Guilt, I think. Maybe recognition. He looked at the trunks like he was seeing them for the first time, as something that had been alive. Son, I said, gentle. What's your name? He swallowed. Cody. Cody, can you take a photograph of this scene with me? For your records. Just in case anyone ever asks you in a deposition what you saw today. Darla went red. Don't answer that. Cody took the photograph. He took 3. I did something then that surprised her. I shook Cody's hand. I thanked him for being honest in a hard moment. Then I walked to the porch, picked up my daughter, and carried her inside without looking at Darla once. Hazel clung to my neck and sobbed the whole way, her tears running warm into the collar of my shirt. Inside, I set her down at the kitchen table. I poured her a glass of lemonade. I wiped her cheeks with a dish towel that used to be Laurel's. Are they gone forever, Daddy? The trees are, but not the grove. We're going to plant 20 in their place, and one of them we're going to name after your mom. She nodded. This time, she believed me. Then I walked into my office and opened Texas Agriculture Code, Chapter 151. Tree Value Appraisal. Replacement cost. Aesthetic damages. Emotional damages where a family homestead is involved. Treble damages under bad faith timber trespass. Section 151.102. Each of those trees, according to the formula, was worth somewhere north of $18,000. Trebled, that was $108,000. Before we even talked about the trailers, Darla had just handed me her own throat. Monday I called the county. Code enforcement. Nuisance division. Travis County. I laid out the timeline on speakerphone while I watched Hazel water the new saplings with a watering can shaped like a cartoon elephant. The intake officer was polite. Sir, we can have a vehicle out there Wednesday. We'll cite the HOA for unpermitted commercial staging and abandoned vehicle storage on a residential parcel. Should be straightforward. It was not straightforward. Wednesday passed. Nobody came. Thursday, I called back. The officer who answered sounded embarrassed. Sir, that case got rerouted. By whom? A pause. I really shouldn't say. Try. A longer pause. Councilman Whitaker's office put a hold on the site visit. He said it was a civil matter between neighbors, and staff shouldn't, quote, burn resources on a spat. Gerald Whitaker, Precinct 3, 2-term incumbent. Also, as it happened, Darla's husband. I knew him by reputation. Soft handshake, firm fundraising, member of the same country club as half the county's department heads. A man who had perfected the art of making a phone call without leaving a fingerprint. I understand, I said, which I didn't. Thank you for being straight with me. I hung up, and I filed a public information request under the Texas Government Code, Chapter 552, for any communications between the councilman's office and the code enforcement supervisor in the last 30 days. 10 business days, by law, to produce. A quiet knowledge nugget you can use. In almost every state, any email a public official sends on public business is a public record by default. Private email, personal phone, doesn't matter. If it concerns public duty, you can demand a copy. Meanwhile, Darla wasn't sitting still. She was accelerating. By the following weekend, she had begun renting her corridor to her own HOA neighbors. For $40 a month, a Willow Crest homeowner could park a boat, an RV, a jet ski, or a landscaping trailer on the strip behind my pecan grove. She advertised it in the community newsletter as Brooks Annex Storage, which was the exact moment my jaw clicked. She was using my family name without permission on her own billing line item. By Sunday night, my property hosted 11 pieces of other people's junk. A camper with a flat tire, a bass boat missing one of its drains, somebody's Cub Cadet riding mower, a pop-up camper that leaked yellow fluid onto my grass. Hazel stood at the screen door counting them. 12, Dad. That one's a canoe. Monday, I ran into Darla at the hardware store. She was in the plumbing aisle, buying a sprinkler coupling, and she lit up when she saw me like we were old college friends. Elliot, how's that lawsuit coming along? Slowly. She tilted her head. You know, my HOA owns that corridor now. My attorney says adverse possession has started the clock. 5 years under Texas law. My husband says the county agrees. Your husband is not the county, Mrs. Whitaker. Well, she smiled thinly. He's close enough. I watched her walk away with her sprinkler coupling, and I had to breathe through my nose for a full minute in the copper fittings section to keep from saying something I'd regret. Adverse possession in Texas requires, among other things, open, notorious, exclusive, and hostile use under a claim of right. She didn't have a single one of those elements correctly. She didn't have any of them. A trailer dropped there 6 weeks ago is not 5 years of possession, and no amount of country club dinners could change the calendar. But she didn't know I was a surveyor. She didn't know what I'd already started pulling from the county archives. That night, after Hazel was asleep and the cicadas had taken over the yard, I sat at my father's old oak desk under a single green banker's lamp. I unrolled 3 plats, one from 1947, one from 1978, one from 2013, and I started laying them over each other the way my grandfather had taught me when I was 9, slowly, corner pin to corner pin, tracing the true bearings with a mechanical pencil. 3 hours in, the pencil slipped. I stared at what I had just drawn, and I laughed, once, quietly, in the dark. The 1947 deed was yellowed at the creases and typed on an old manual with a sticky M. My great-grandfather, Harlan Brooks, had purchased the land from a rancher named Everett Kimball for $918 and a bay mare named Lucy. But he had negotiated something extra that Kimball didn't want to give up. A 60-foot wide private right-of-way, not an easement, a recorded right-of-way and fee, along the northern edge of what used to be the Kimball home pasture. That strip of dirt was what later became the only paved entrance road into Willow Crest Estates. When the developer platted the subdivision in 2013, the title company missed it completely. They'd searched 40 years back, which was standard. They did not search far enough to catch a 1947 conveyance. The Willow Crest plat showed the entrance road as common area, dedicated to the HOA, fee simple, except it wasn't theirs. It was mine. Furthermore, the strip where the trailers now sat, the one Darla kept calling the corridor, had a different problem. The 2013 plat showed it as utility easement reserved. But when I pulled the actual easement document, it was signed only by the developer and recorded against the parcel number that did not exist, a clerical error. The parcel identifier on the filing was 6 digits. The correct one was 7. The easement referenced land that, legally, had never been platted. It was a ghost easement, recorded but legally void. I sat back in the banker's lamp glow with my mouth slightly open. My great-grandfather, 79 years dead, had just shown up to help me defend his grandson's grandchild. The takeaway, and this one is worth remembering. In real estate, an easement or right-of-way that was properly recorded by your ancestor can stay enforceable for 100 years, even when the newer subdivision forgets it exists. You don't lose rights because somebody else forgot to look. At 6 in the morning, I called Holloway Caldwell and read him the 1947 description over the phone. There was a long silence. Then a slow, dry laugh. Son, Mrs. Whitaker's HOA is parking trailers on land they don't own, and every single one of her homeowners drives in and out over a private corridor she doesn't own either. That corridor is yours to gate, if you chose to. Tomorrow, if you chose to. I know. What do you want to do with this? I thought about Hazel, about the pecan trunks in the grass, about Darla's pink drink at the pool, about the cub cadet leaking oil onto Laurel's irises. "I want to do it right," I said. "I want to do it legally, cleanly, and in public. And I want her to pay every cent." Attaboy. Holloway laughed the kind of laugh old attorneys laugh when they smell a career case. "Give me 3 days. I'll have the pleadings ready." I hung up. I stepped outside. The Texas sky was pink along the eastern horizon, and a mockingbird was running through its entire repertoire on the roof of the second-generation pecan stump. For the first time in 3 weeks, I exhaled all the way. The next 72 hours, I moved with the calm of a man who had been handed the exact tools his trade had prepared him to use. Monday, I filed Brooks Storage and Stewardship LLC with the Texas Secretary of State, paid the $300 fee, and registered a DBA. By Monday afternoon, I had a certificate of formation taped to my refrigerator next to Hazel's last math quiz. Tuesday, I pulled a commercial use permit through the county planning department, filed under outdoor vehicle storage, residential compatible. The clerk, Margaret Doyle, took my paperwork, noticed the names involved, and held eye contact for one long professional second. "You'll want this process today, I expect, Mr. Brooks. If it's not too much trouble, Mrs. Doyle." "It's not." A pause. "My nephew works that landscape crew. He told me what happened with your pecan trees. You just got expedited service. Sometimes the quiet decency of ordinary people does more work than the law." Wednesday morning, I bolted a commercial-grade ANPR camera, automatic number plate recognition, to a pole above my gatepost and a second one above the rear of the storage strip. Every vehicle that crossed onto my land from now on would be time-stamped, plate captured, stored in a cloud log, and billed automatically at $75 an hour per foot of trailer length, with a $200 minimum and a service fee. I had signs reprinted at a professional shop. 36 inches by 48, matte reflective vinyl, compliant with Texas Penal Code 30.05 and Texas Property Code Chapter 59, posted every 50 feet around the contested strip. I added a new sign at the entrance gate to my right-of-way corridor, the one the HOA's road crossed, that read simply, "Private road, access by permission, permission revocable in writing." That last sign is the one that, later, made Darla scream. Thursday, I drove to an old neighbor's cattle gate 3 miles south. Ray Ashford, 78, leathery, widowed, and explained what was happening. Ray had known my father. Ray also had 4 cousins on the county road commission. By Thursday evening, I had quiet promises from 3 of them that when I filed my emergency quiet title action, it would not get misrouted. Friday, I recorded a perpetual conservation easement on 50 acres of my pecan grove with a regional land trust. The easement locked my land against development forever, and it had a second, quieter purpose. It created a third-party legal interest in every square inch of my property. From the moment it recorded, nobody, not Darla, not the HOA, not a future bad faith buyer, could claim adverse possession or common area creep on my family's ground, ever again. The knowledge nugget worth writing down. A conservation easement is a gift, a tax deduction, and a shield all at once. Done correctly, it outlives the owner and outlives the threat. Saturday, I filed a title insurance claim against the HOA's developer-era title company, demanding indemnity for the ghost easement they'd missed in 2013. Their general counsel called me on Saturday evening. By Sunday lunch, they had agreed, in writing, to formally renounce the corridor easement and pay my legal costs. Sunday night, I met Sergeant Galloway of the Texas Rangers at a diner in Lampasas. We'd known each other 9 years, since I'd helped his brother settle a fence dispute with a bad developer. He listened, he took notes, he sipped black coffee. At the end of my story, he said, "Elliot, when y'all do the reveal, you call me. I'll be there in uniform." Monday morning, Holloway Caldwell filed everything at once. A trespass action, a tree damage action under Chapter 151, a quiet title action on the corridor, a declaratory judgment on the 1947 right-of-way, a formal notice of commercial storage contract acceptance, mailed certified to the HOA and each of its board members individually, Barbara Penn, Tom Reeves, Nadine Prescott, and Darla Whitaker, with the exact total to date at the bottom, $46,725 and climbing. I set the hearing date for 3 weeks out, public docket, open to the community. Then I did one more thing. I drafted, signed, notarized, and filed the legal notice required under Texas law to close a private right-of-way to public use. Effective noon on the day of the hearing. I put Hazel to bed that night and stood in the hallway listening to her breathe. My father once told me the quietest rooms are the ones right before the courthouse opens. He wasn't wrong. Something in Darla's animal brain must have sensed the weather changing. She didn't know what had been filed at the courthouse yet. The clerk's office does not broadcast pleadings, but she could feel the air pressure drop. She responded the only way she knew how, which was to double her stake at the exact wrong table. On a Thursday afternoon, while Hazel was at summer camp practicing her backstroke, I came home to find a fifth trailer on my land. This one, however, was not a trailer I had expected. It was the HOA's holiday storage trailer, 42 feet long, painted with a cartoon reindeer, and stuffed to the gills with Christmas decorations, generators, a 10-foot inflatable snowman, 3 life-size plastic angels with cracked halos, and, inexplicably, a crate of unopened pool chemicals labeled "Do Not Mix." There was also a fresh HOA crest stenciled on my gatepost. I stood in the dust and laughed once, short, dry, unamused. Then I walked inside, fired up the ANPR software, and confirmed the timestamp of the trailer's entry, 1:47 p.m. I started a new billing line. I took 14 photographs. I printed all 14. Then I called Holloway Caldwell. "She's escalating," I said. "Good," he said. "Every one of these moves is a fact the judge gets to hear. Keep logging." Later, I learned what Darla was doing in the background. Margaret Doyle, the county clerk, called me privately on Friday morning. Her voice was lowered to the register women use when somebody has just tried to corrupt their office, and they are still deciding whether to be furious. "Mr. Brooks, Mrs. Whitaker came into the records annex yesterday. She asked if there was any way to, quote, misplace an old deed recording. She offered me $400 cash. I said no. I wrote down the conversation, word for word, in my incident log, and had my supervisor initial it. I thought you should know." I thanked her. I asked if she'd be willing to submit a sworn statement to the court. She said she already had one printing. The takeaway you should save. Attempting to bribe a public records clerk is a separate crime under Texas Penal Code Chapter 36. A Karen who does it for $40 or $400 is the same class of felon as a Karen who tries to do it for $4 million. She just has worse margin. By Friday afternoon, Darla had moved to Phase 2. She started calling people, my bank, pretending to be me, asking for account verifications. My daughter's school, pretending to be a concerned neighbor, asking about my mental state. My own clients, asking whether they were aware their surveyor had recently become, quote, litigious and unreliable. 2 of those clients called me directly. Both told Darla where to stick it, in their own words. My bank flagged the social engineering attempt and alerted the fraud division. I filed a report with the FBI's Internet Crime Center for wire fraud attempts on a federally insured institution. That federal hook was one I added on purpose. Cases move differently when there is a federal thread running through them. By Saturday, Darla was live streaming pool parties on the Willow Crest Community Facebook group. She posed with her board, raised a pink drink, and announced that certain outside agitators were trying to undermine the safety and beauty of their community, but that rest assured, the board stands firm. Tom Reeves, the HOA treasurer, posted in the comments a photograph of my driveway with my license plate visible, captioned, "Know your neighbors." I took a screenshot. I added it to Holloway's file. At 7 that night, I sat on the porch with Hazel and a bowl of cold watermelon. The first cricket of the evening started up in the fence line. A slow breeze carried the smell of cut hay off Ray Ashford's pasture. Hazel leaned her head against my shoulder. "Dad, are you scared?" "No, Hazelnut." "Why not?" "Because she's doing all my work for me." She chewed a piece of watermelon and watched the pink sky bruise toward purple. "Good," she said. "Good." The next move was worse because it used my daughter as a lever. On a Wednesday morning, a caseworker from the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services knocked on my door. Her name was Ms. Trent. She was polite, tired, and visibly embarrassed to be there. She had received an anonymous report that a 12-year-old girl at my address was being raised in an unstable environment by a father exhibiting, quote, erratic and obsessive behavior over a land dispute. I invited her in. I gave her a glass of iced tea. I asked her to take her time. I asked if I could record the interview for my records. She said that was my right. She interviewed Hazel at the kitchen table while I sat 3 rooms away. I listened through a baby monitor I'd bought years ago when Hazel had pneumonia and never took down. Hazel answered every question like the serious small adult she had always been. Her dad read to her every night. Her dad cooked dinner. Her dad checked her homework. Her dad had a calendar on the fridge with every birthday, every dentist appointment, every violin recital written in green pen. Ms. Trent closed her folder after 17 minutes. In the doorway, she looked at me and said very quietly, "Mr. Brooks, I'm going to recommend this case be closed as unfounded. If somebody files again, I'll recognize the handwriting." I thanked her. I shook her hand. I did not cry until she'd pulled out of my driveway, and then only for 40 seconds, leaning on the refrigerator while Hazel hugged my waist. Then I called Holloway Caldwell and told him to add a malicious reporting claim under Texas Family Code Section 261.107 to the pleadings. A takeaway worth keeping because it helps real families. Filing a knowingly false child welfare report is a crime in most states, and the investigating agency usually keeps a record of the caller or IP address. If you are the target of a retaliatory call, you can request the intake log through your attorney. I didn't know yet it was Darla. I suspected, but the confirmation came from an unlikely ally, Cody, the 19-year-old chainsaw operator. He showed up at my gate 2 days later in his own beat-up Silverado, wringing his cap in his hands. "Mr. Brooks, I heard Mrs. Whitaker make the call. I was in the garage. She used her cell, and she was laughing." "Cody, are you willing to say that under oath?" He looked at the ground. He looked at the pecans. He looked at Hazel's bicycle, leaning against the porch rail. "Yes, sir." He signed a sworn affidavit on my kitchen table, while Hazel poured him lemonade. He told me afterward that what had finally tipped him was seeing Hazel cry through the front window the morning the trees came down. "I should have said no, sir. I was just a kid with a saw and a boss. But I should have said no." "You're saying no now," I told him. "That's what matters." Meanwhile, Darla's public campaign was eating her own neighbors. She held an emergency HOA board meeting that Friday and proposed a special assessment, $400 per household, to fund the HOA's legal defense against the aggressive outsider attempting to steal community property. A few of the older homeowners, the ones who had lived on the original Kimball Ranch edge for decades, started asking questions. Questions about deeds, questions about plats, questions about why, exactly, a neighbor they had always liked was being treated this way. Barbara Penn resigned from the board that Sunday. Nadine Prescott followed her on Monday. Tom Reeves stayed loyal because Tom Reeves had a boat on my land. Hazel brought me a piece of paper on Tuesday evening. She had drawn it in colored pencil. Our pecan grove, 20 new saplings, a little girl under the tallest one, waving at a tall man in a surveyor's vest. At the bottom, in her careful 12-year-old handwriting, "Dad, we're going to win." I taped it to the refrigerator next to the LLC certificate. The annual HOA meeting was held the third Wednesday in September at the Willow Crest Clubhouse, a beige stucco building with a wagon wheel nailed over the entrance, because somebody thought that was what Texas looked like. The room sat 110. It was full. The board had pushed hard on attendance, framing the meeting as a community unity event. Local news had picked up the story earlier that week. A reporter named Pamela Sutton sat in the third row with a camera and a notepad. The community's own live stream camera blinked red on a tripod in the back. Darla had insisted on the live stream, of course. She was going to make an example of the troublemaker. I walked in at 7:03. Holloway Caldwell walked in behind me in a navy bow tie. Sergeant Galloway walked in behind Holloway, in a Texas Rangers uniform with a badge that caught the overhead light. Behind them came 2 additional Rangers, 1 stenographer, and a man from the county clerk's office carrying a sealed tube of plats. Margaret Doyle brought up the rear, carrying a zippered pouch stuffed with certified copies. The room's noise dropped about 50% on sight of the uniforms. Darla, in a cream blazer at the head table, stood up sharply. Her husband Gerald, seated in the front row, half rose and then froze like a man who just stepped on a pressure plate. "Mr. Brooks," Darla said, "this is a members-only meeting." "Actually, Mrs. Whitaker, the community bylaws require this meeting to be open to adjacent landowners whose property affects community business." Holloway handed her a printed copy of her own bylaws, with the relevant clause highlighted in yellow. She sat down slowly. I stepped to the lectern. I did not raise my voice. "Good evening, neighbors. My name is Elliot Brooks. Some of you know my daughter. Some of you have stored boats on my land without realizing it was my land. Tonight I am going to show you 4 things. Then I'll answer questions. I clicked the first slide. The 1947 deed. This deed conveyed to my great-grandfather a 60-foot private right-of-way along the northern edge of the Kimball pasture. That strip of dirt is what later became your entrance road. The road you drove in on tonight belongs to me. A murmur moved through the room like wind on wheat. Slide 2. The ghost easement, with the mismatched parcel number circled in red. The corridor Mrs. Whitaker has been parking trailers on, renting to her neighbors, and calling HOA common area. That easement was filed against a parcel number that does not exist. It is void. The title insurance company has acknowledged it in writing. I click to the next. A satellite photograph overlaid with my property lines, the trailers, the tree stumps, and a scrolling timestamp. Slide 3. Between August 12th and today, your HOA trailers have occupied my private property for 2,718 hours. 2 heritage pecan trees, valued at $18,400 apiece, were unlawfully felled. Under Texas Agriculture Code 151.102, that damage trebles. Slide 4. An itemized invoice, totals in bold. Storage fees, $203,850. Tree damages trebled, $110,430. Incidental damages, $12,000. Sworn affidavit of retaliatory CPS report, referred to the district attorney. Grand total billed to the HOA, $326,280. Darla made a sound, somewhere between a laugh and a wounded sheep. And the last item, I said. A notice, effective tomorrow at 12 noon. The private right-of-way across the northern strip of my land is closed to public vehicle traffic. That means the road into Willow Crest Estates will be gated, unless and until the HOA settles this matter. The room detonated. Gerald Whitaker stood up, pointed at me, and shouted. Sergeant Galloway stepped forward. Councilman, sit down. I have a separate matter with you. Darla screamed something about slander. Pamela Sutton's camera was rolling. The live stream viewer count, somebody later told me, hit 4,000 people at the moment Galloway put a gentle hand on Gerald Whitaker's elbow and escorted him out of the room under what turned out, the next morning, to be a grand jury indictment for official oppression. The room watched Gerald leave. Then the room watched Darla, alone at her head table, in her cream blazer, finally run out of smile. I folded my papers. I nodded to Holloway. Thank you for your time, neighbors. See you in court. The HOA settled in 11 days. Not out of decency, out of math. Their legal team ran the numbers, saw the exposure, saw the right-of-way gate, and told the board there was no path that didn't end in bankruptcy or a judgment that would have the same effect. They paid $326,280 in full, by wire, on a Tuesday morning. Their own homeowners voted Darla out of the HOA presidency the following Friday. The vote was 91-7. The 7 were Tom Reeves and his immediate family. Gerald Whitaker resigned from the city council within the month. The grand jury proceedings continued on their own quiet schedule. Their house, it turned out, had been over-leveraged against a string of bad commercial real estate investments. The bank foreclosed before Christmas. The last time I saw Darla, she was loading a U-Haul in the gray rain, cream blazer replaced by a fleece jacket, and she did not look up as my truck passed. I drove home. Hazel was waiting on the porch with her own small shovel. I did not spend the settlement on myself. I put Hazel's college tuition aside. Her mother would have wanted that. And I took the rest to a sit-down with Holloway Caldwell, Margaret Doyle, and Ray Ashford around a diner table. Together, we created the Pecan Grove Conservation and Scholarship Fund. The fund does 3 things. It gives a sapling to every child in the county who turns 12 that year, paired with a weekend planting workshop taught by retired land stewards. It endows a trade scholarship for any kid in the county who wants to apprentice into surveying, forestry, or land stewardship without going into debt. And it funds a free legal aid clinic for homeowners facing unlawful HOA overreach, staffed pro bono twice a month by Holloway and 3 of his bow-tied friends. Cody, the 19-year-old who had spoken the truth under oath, was the first scholarship recipient. He's studying at the surveying program at Texas State. Last summer, he interned on my crew. He is, I will say without exaggeration, the best young rodman I have trained in 15 years. We planted 20 new pecan saplings in the gap where the old trees had stood. Hazel named one of them Laurel. She waters it every Sunday with a watering can shaped like a cartoon elephant. The sapling is now taller than she is. By the time she graduates high school, it will be taller than me. The community healed slowly. Willow Crest elected a new board. Barbara Penn came back and apologized to me in person at the feed store, holding a tin of her homemade pecan brittle. The HOA's trailers were sold at auction. The corridor was gated. The private road reopened, under a written license agreement that pays $12 a month per household, a rate I deliberately set low, because I was never in this for rent. On Thanksgiving, I fed Hazel pecan pie, made with pecans from the new sapling's first harvest. 3 handfuls, barely enough to fill a pie crust, but enough. Ray Ashford sat at our table. Holloway sat at our table. Margaret Doyle sat at our table, bringing her own green bean casserole. Sergeant Galloway sent a card. If this story has a lesson, it is this. The loudest people are almost never the most dangerous, and quiet preparation will outlast louder power every single time. If you have an HOA Karen horror story of your own, share it in the comments. I read every one. And if you want to see how the next one ended, when a county commissioner tried to run a new access road straight through a widow's pecan orchard, well, tap subscribe. I'll see you there.
What made Dalla Whitaker lose wasn't Elias Brooks' anger. It was her uncertainty. She was so sure her HOA badge and her husband's city council seats were armor that she forgot to read a deed. That's the thing about petty power. It makes people sloppy. It makes them skip the paperwork. It makes them sign statements they shouldn't, rent out land they don't own, and code child welfare on the widower raising his daughter. And every one of those shortcuts becomes evident in somebody else's file. Elias' real estate wasn't his profession. It was his passion. He documented. He waited. He gave his voice down and his records up. He let her keep reaching until she reached too far, and then he simply closed the door he's always owned. The beauty of that growth today. Saplings Hazel named after her mother. A scholarship carrying Cody into a real career. A legal aid clinic helping other families came directly from Dalla's refusals to stop. If you ever deal with an HOA that forgot it's owned by laws, tell me your story in the comments. I read everyone. If you believe in justice that's earned quietly, hit subscribe. Next week, a retired window pecan orchard get a surprise visit from a county commissioner who thinks he can push a new access road through in 60 days. He wishes he checked her last name.